Build a psychological radar instantly to stop bleeding your cognitive power in public. You sit down in a crowded room, a tense family gathering, or a high-stakes conversation, and the moment there is a fraction of a second of silence, you immediately speak first. You rush to fill the void. You think you are breaking the ice. You believe you are taking control of the social dynamic. You are absolutely wrong. If you want to understand why true Stoics refuse to speak, you must accept a highly uncomfortable clinical reality. Speaking first, over-explaining yourself, and rushing to fill the silence is not a display of high emotional intelligence. It is a primal biological weakness. It proves to everyone in the room that your nervous system is entirely incapable of tolerating tension. Modern society constantly tells you to speak your truth, to assert your voice, and to fight for attention. But clinical behavioral psychology and ancient Stoic philosophy reveal that fighting for the spotlight is the ultimate form of emotional fragility. Right now, millions of individuals are exhausting their cognitive bandwidth simply because they are biologically terrified of being quiet. If you do not understand the exact neurochemical advantage of remaining completely silent, you will permanently surrender your internal control to whoever is the loudest. Today, we are going to clinically dissect the hidden hierarchy of silence and exactly how true Stoic thinkers become fundamentally untouchable. Understand why speaking first destroys your leverage. We must examine the evolutionary biology of human observation. For millions of years, the individuals who survived the longest were not the loudest, they were the most observant. Silence is not an absence of action. In biological terms, silence is a state of hypervigilance and absolute data collection. When you enter a social environment and immediately start talking, you instantly stop observing. Your brain switches from a defensive absorption state to an exhausting, performative output state. You are giving away your psychological position before you even understand the behavioral baseline of the people around you. A weak nervous system perceives the silence of a room as an immediate social threat, triggering a subtle panic response. You speak to soothe your own anxiety. You tell a joke, you offer an unprompted opinion, or you try to steer the conversation simply to prove to your own amygdala that you are safe. But the true Stoic operates on an entirely different biological framework. They understand that he who speaks first reveals his psychological hand first. Listen to me very carefully, because the neuroplastic window to reverse this severe biological leakage of power is closing rapidly. Every single time you rush to fill the silence out of pure social anxiety, your brain physically prunes the neural pathways required for genuine Stoic composure and baseline emotional regulation. The psychological decay of your nervous system compounds hour by hour. If you look away or close this video right now, you are consciously choosing to remain a voluntary slave to your own fragile biology, guaranteeing that your deepest insecurities will be exposed the moment the room goes quiet. You must understand the clinical mechanics of this cognitive shield today before your self-respect is irreversibly drained. How does silence protect your nervous system? Let us clinically dissect what actually happens to your internal neurochemistry when you embrace absolute silence. In behavioral psychology, we track a critical biological resource known as cognitive bandwidth. Your brain has a finite, mathematically limited amount of processing power available for any given social interaction. Every word you speak, every emotional inflection you force, and every micro-expression you deploy to win the approval of the room requires a massive amount of this bandwidth. When you are constantly talking, your prefrontal cortex is redlining. You are actively depleting your dopamine reserves and spiking your cortisol levels simply to maintain a highly artificial social persona. You are exhausting yourself. Silence is the ultimate biological preservation mechanism. When you refuse to speak, you put your central nervous system into a state of deep emotional regulation. You immediately stop bleeding cognitive energy. While the loud, insecure individuals in the room are frantically exhausting their neurochemistry trying to impress each other, you are operating at biological baseline. Your heart rate remains entirely stable. Your breathing remains slow and deep. Because you are not busy performing, your brain has 100% of its processing power available to clinically observe the room. You catch the micro-expressions of envy. You notice the passive-aggressive tone in someone's voice. You see exactly who is desperate for validation and who is secretly insecure. Silence protects your nervous system because it allows you to detach from the emotional chaos of the tribe. You become the observer of the experiment rather than the frantic subject trapped inside of it. What is a Stoic cognitive shield? You must completely redefine your understanding of power. Modern pop psychology has convinced you that power equals volume. But over 2,000 years ago, Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius understood that true, unshakable power is invisible. It is the mastery of the internal state regardless of external friction. This mastery creates what clinical psychology would call a cognitive shield. A cognitive shield is a psychological barrier that prevents the toxic, dysregulated emotions of other people from penetrating your nervous system. And the primary building block of this impenetrable shield is absolute silence. When you possess a true Stoic cognitive shield, your self-worth is generated entirely from within. You do not need the external world to agree with you, applaud you, or validate your existence. Therefore, when someone attempts to provoke you, insult you, or drag you into a meaningless argument, you do not feel the biological urge to respond. A fragile ego immediately takes the bait. A weak nervous system feels instantly attacked and rushes to defend itself with loud, emotional justifications. But a Stoic mind simply watches the provocation bounce off the cognitive shield. By remaining completely silent, you deny the other person access to your internal neurochemistry. You refuse to give them the data they need to hurt you. You prove to your own biology that their words hold absolutely no weight over your reality. Silence is not surrender. It is the ultimate psychological fortress. You will absolutely never hear this clinical reality from mainstream online therapists, modern self-help influencers, or popular communication gurus. Because teaching you to always express your feelings and constantly bleed your emotional data is the foundational backbone of a society that wants you fragile, predictable, and easy to control. This is the carefully hidden behavioral architecture that true Stoic thinkers understand intimately, while the fragile masses exhaust themselves screaming to be understood. If you do not master this exclusive biological reality in the next 2 minutes, you will remain highly profitable prey for toxic individuals who actively feed on your emotional reactions. You simply cannot afford to miss how your own desperate urge to speak is destroying your cognitive shield. Why does your silence terrify loud people? Let us examine the exact behavioral asymmetry that occurs when you deploy this Stoic weapon in the real world. The primitive human brain simply cannot process someone who is completely comfortable in absolute silence. It goes against the deeply ingrained biological programming of the tribe. When you sit in a room, maintain heavy, unblinking eye contact, and refuse to offer a single word of unnecessary validation, you trigger a massive subconscious panic in the loud, insecure individuals around you. Loud people rely on a constant loop of external feedback to feel safe. They need you to nod, smile, laugh, and agree with them to keep their fragile ego intact. When you withhold that feedback through silence, you create a terrifying psychological vacuum. The loud individual's amygdala immediately detects danger. They assume your silence means disapproval, judgment, or superior intelligence. Their cortisol spikes. Because their nervous system cannot handle the tension of the void, they will desperately rush to fill it. They will start talking faster. They will begin over-explaining themselves, backpedaling on their statements, cracking nervous jokes, and revealing their deepest insecurities simply to force a reaction out of you. You did not have to lift a finger, raise your voice, or exert a single ounce of cognitive energy. By simply remaining an immovable Stoic object, you force their entire behavioral algorithm to completely collapse in on itself. Your silence becomes their ultimate psychological mirror. How do manipulators exploit your need to talk? Let us dissect exactly how your inability to remain silent is ruthlessly weaponized against you by highly toxic individuals. Covert narcissists, emotional manipulators, and psychological predators do not look for strong opponents, they look for biological leaks. To a manipulator, your constant need to talk is a massive, glowing vulnerability. When you over-explain yourself, justify your boundaries, or constantly share your unprompted opinions, you are freely giving the predator highly sensitive data points. You are handing them a detailed map of your ego, your emotional triggers, and your biological fears. Once a manipulator knows exactly what you care about, they own your nervous system. They know exactly which buttons to press to dysregulate your dopamine and spike your anxiety. When you finally try to confront them about their toxic behavior, they will not argue the facts. They will use your own words against you. They will twist the emotional data you freely provided to gaslight your reality. And because your nervous system is already programmed to seek their validation, you will fall right back into the trap of over-explaining yourself. You completely surrender your emotional autonomy. They did not have to overpower your logic. They simply weaponized your own lack of Stoic discipline. You willingly walked into their psychological cage because you believed that talking more would somehow save you. The mathematical cost of your inaction today is absolute and entirely unforgiving. Your profound inability to endure silence is actively destroying your internal peace, your self-respect, and your mental resilience at this exact second. Every single time you over-explain yourself to someone who does not respect you, you create a compounded psychological debt that you will be forced to pay back with severe anxiety and total loss of emotional control tomorrow. You have less than a minute to completely reprogram this cognitive failure before your cognitive shield is permanently shattered, your biological weakness is exploited by predators, and your Stoic fortitude is entirely erased. Listen closely to the final blueprint. How to become untouchable through Stoic silence. You have to break this biological programming immediately. You must forcefully stop confusing silence with weakness. If you want to develop an impenetrable cognitive shield and command undeniable biological respect in any environment, you must willingly step into the agonizing discomfort of the void. You must learn to starve the room of your emotional data. The next time you walk into a chaotic family gathering, a tense social dynamic, or a confrontation with a manipulative individual, execute a deliberate neurological reset. Do not announce your presence. Find a strong physical posture, plant your feet firmly on the ground, and refuse to speak first. Notice the massive, burning spike of adrenaline in your chest. Notice the primal, desperate urge to crack a joke, soften the tension, or over-explain your position simply to make the other people comfortable. And let that urge completely die. Do not react to it. Stay in the fire of the tension. Maintain cold, clinical eye contact. Watch the dysregulated people in the room completely exhaust their nervous systems trying to figure you out. Study their micro-expressions of panic. Train your amygdala that silence does not equal biological death. Teach your central nervous system that your identity is inherently untouchable, entirely regardless of the noise happening around you. This is the absolute peak of Stoic fortitude. This is the only legitimate path to true emotional intelligence and unshakable internal dominance. Anything else is just a highly profitable delusion sold to you by a society that is terrified of the quiet. The psychological trap of needing to speak is absolutely real, but now you possess the exact clinical blueprint to forge your cognitive shield. You are no longer blind to your own biological vulnerability, which means you no longer have any excuse to remain a voluntary slave to the noise. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon to master your primal psychology before the toxic manipulators in your circle use your own words to completely destroy your peace. Check the resources in the description to actively rebuild your cognitive framework from the ground up and start operating like the top 1% of true Stoic thinkers. Stop bleeding your energy to impress people who do not matter. It is time to drop the performative ego, embrace the terrifying power of the void, and become fundamentally untouchable today.